On March 3rd, 2017, the dawn of the Nintendo Switch launch, a little indie title known as Blaster Master Zero was released in Japan and worldwide on March 9th. This game was a complete reimagining of Sunsoft's Blaster Master, which launched on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1988, keeping the original's 2D side-scrolling and top-down view mutant blasting action while modernizing it, but also incorporating all the story elements from all corners of Blaster Master history. The original Japanese version, Meta Fight, introduced the lore of the planet Sophia and the Metal Attackers, battle tanks created by the Nora Science Institute in response to the threat of a universe-conquering overlord. The localized English release that those of us in the West got, that completely threw that lore out of the window and instead made the story about a normal teenager named Jason Frudnick, whose pet frog, the good boy Fred, escaped and led him to the Sophia 3rd tank and the suit to battle mutants that have invaded Earth's underground. Even the Worlds of Power novel that introduced the world to Jason's alien girlfriend, Eve. Well, at least they did get married in the original Blaster Master lore when the novel was written into canon later on. But in Blaster Master Zero, Eve is a support android from planet Sophia that is assigned to the metal attacker Sophia 3. Jason rescues her early on, similar to the novel, and they quickly form a close bond from there. With all these different versions of Blaster Master history in mind, Inti Creates sought to bring it all together into one masterpiece, with some liberties taken here and there, like Jason now being a robotics engineer, hey that reminds me of somebody, and completely rebooting the series from zero, hence Blaster Master Zero. The game would see enough success to warrant a sequel, Blaster Master Zero 2, that was announced and shadow dropped 2 years later, during a Nintendo Nindy showcase in March of 2019. This was where the shackles of being a remake were removed and Inti went all out to forging their own tale for the Blaster Master universe. This time, chronicling our hero's interplanetary journey upon the new Gaia Sophia to Eve's home planet, Sophia, in search of a cure for the mutant infection that has overtaken her, with a bunch of new metal attacker pilots and support droids based on various Sunsoft games thrown into the mix.
Basically, I can tell you that our character designer's vision for Akana definitely came true.
With 2 titles and a ton of DLC out the door, the question was, what's next for the Blaster Master Zero series? As much as people wanted even more DLC characters, since to be fair, the execution of how they incorporated those characters into the BMZ style was just perfect. Nope. The answer is continuing tradition, of course. That's right. Yet another 2 years later, this month of March during New Game Plus Expo 2021, BMZ fans finally got confirmation that the trilogy will be completed with the announcement of Blaster Master Zero 3 for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Steam, and an Inti first, the Epic Games Store 2, on July 29th, 2021. No shadow drop this time around, but that does give us a few months to hop aboard the hype Sophia and blast off with the speculation, eh? Alongside the announcement of the 3rd chapter, Inti Creates is releasing a compilation of all 3 BMZ games into one physical edition in Japan under the name Blaster Master Zero Trilogy. This collection will also launch on July 29th on Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. It will come with the trilogy of games with BMZ 1 and 2's DLC all on the disc or cart, an art book, and an arranged soundtrack CD, which you can hear a preview of with the Area 1 theme remix in the trailer. Again, BMZ Trilogy is only coming to Japan so far. Localization producer at Inti, Matt Papa, has stated on a recent livestream that there are no news on this or any other physical edition announcements for BMZ 3 on the western side of the pond just yet. Meanwhile, Limited Run Games did just ship out their own BMZ 1 and 2 collector's editions, which Matt himself admits are the best packages you can get right now. So it makes sense they might want to do something different for outside of Japan with BMZ 3. Maybe another collaboration with Limited Run? We'll see. But just know, there's no official announcements yet. And with that, welcome to my analysis of Blaster Master 03. Let's plunge into the BMZ 3 trailers, key art, and more in search of details, while I'll more than likely gush about this series I've come to love. But hold on there, Space Cowboy. Before we blast off, here's your fair warning. I will 100% be spoiling the ending of Blaster Master 02 during this analysis as it becomes relevant. And if you haven't experienced the story for yourself yet, I highly recommend you click off the video right now. Download both games and play them for yourself. Do yourself a favor. If you are also a fan of Inti's own Azure Striker Gunvolt series, that should give you an idea of what kind of twists there are in store for you. Maybe not as crazy as Gunvolt's twists, but somewhere around that ballpark. Seriously, go give the Sophia for a spin yourself, because I would dare not spoil the goodness for you here. Now, if you are still here, let's go! G-SOPHIA SV! Let's begin with that mention in the trailer about BMZ 3 being
the final piece of a trilogy.
Many have taken that to mean there will be no more BMZ games after this one. Well, that's not necessarily the case. As Matt Papa has explained in a recent livestream.
Now, it's worth noting, he did say it's the final piece of a trilogy.
Right.
And like in the press release, you said like the Jason saga comes to its conclusion.
Right.
Take that for what you want.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the only characters in
Exactly.
that series.
Exactly. The world of Blaster Master Zero is vast and wide.
Getting bigger
it's
every single
interplanetary.
title. Yeah.
There's not just people, there's planets and stuff. So keep that in mind. You can take that to mean whatever you want, but just so you know.
That's how people.
Alright, I get what you mean, Matt. Blaster Master Zero Chronicles Leibniz confirmed. Oh yeah! That joke aside, maybe they would also remake Blaster Master Blasting Again on the PS1, where in that game, the story is Jason and Eve get killed off, and their children, Roddy and Elfie, take up the fight in their stead. Tragic, ain't it? But hey, Jason and Eve are still alive in this continuity. For now. Trademark, registered, copyright. In the meantime, remember the children, Roddy and Elfie. That will become relevant in just a bit. So, what's going on with the story this time anyway? As the press release reads, Jason returns to where the series truly began, the planet Sophia, aboard the all-terrain battle tank G-SOPHIA SV, in order to save Eve once and for all. Yep, seems Eve has gotten herself kidnapped or along those lines in this game. Poor girl, can't even catch a break. Guess we ain't getting as much as that cute banter from the previous two games in this one. Unless they're able to communicate remotely somehow. That's our ultimate goal settled then. Speaking of goals, we indeed have finally arrived on planet Sophia, after that whole ordeal last game. Makes sense, our story takes place here, but that does leave the question of what's the deal with that post-credits ending in BMZ 2. In it, we had Leibniz, the bee's knees, however it's supposed to be pronounced. I'm just gonna go with Leibniz for this. He's our main rival from BMZ 2 that piloted the aerial metal attacker Garuda, who in this scene had just received a transmission from planet Earth, calling for Jason's help as the mutants have invaded once again. Leibniz takes on the mission for himself, wondering aloud what Jason would think of him being the hero this time around, before he rockets off to Earth, but not without a "let's go Lucia," who was his support droid that had been lost before the events of BMZ 2. No official reference has been made to this scene yet in the context of BMZ 3, but Inti Creates rarely includes a tease for no reason, so it's likely this secret mission of sorts will play into the story of BMZ 3 somehow. unless they're saving it for either a Leibniz specific spin-off title or DLC, but I kinda doubt it. I mean, I would be down for a Leibniz mode, and I'm not even gonna rule him out of being playable in BMZ3 itself. But we do have quite a number of reasons to believe he'll be playing an integral role in the plot in some fashion. After all, not only do we find him in the key art, but we even find Jason using the Garuda's homing lasers as a sub-weapon on the G-SOPHIA SV. Match Papa even makes a remark about this, essentially challenging us to figure out why that is.
Yeah, so I see some of you eagle-eyed folks in the chat have noticed this already, but that is actually the same laser weapon from Blaster Master 02 that the metal attacker Garuda uses. So, yeah, I wonder how that got there.
Alright, challenge accepted. Well, it's safe to assume the gameplay demo we saw was from early on in the game. The homing laser is either the second sub-weapon you get, or you start with it. So clearly something happened to the Garuda before this point, at least if we're going to read into this a bunch. Here's a few theories I had. Numero uno, the Garuda got damaged either during that mission to Earth at the end of BMZ2, or some other way which caused Jason to salvage the parts for his own. Numero dos, the Garuda is the first boss in the game and Jason wins the weapon from Leibniz himself. Numero tres, Leibniz, having a change of heart at the end of BMZ2, decides to help Jason save Eve and lends the homing laser to him. Whatever happened, it's clear at least that the G-SOPHIA is looking a bit more blue nowadays. See the blue streak on the sides? Yep, that wasn't there before. Otherwise, the G-SOPHIA looks virtually unchanged compared to its BMZ2 appearance. Maybe the blue sides is representative of some sort of collaboration with the Garuda itself? It did sport a blue color scheme after all. And or it's a side effect of the new VRV system that allows Jason to jump between dimensions. Yep, we're breaking dimensional walls in this adventure, which I guess is not all too surprising considering all the Sunsoft characters in BMZ2. What's next, the fourth wall? But hold up, what is that there in the key art? Another Sophia? Or does this metal attacker belong to Leibniz because it's placed right beside him in the key art? No, I think the Sophia definitely belongs to Jason, because the same tank is also pictured in the Blaster Master Zero Trilogy key art, which features elements from all three games in the series, implying this Sophia is the final iteration that Jason ends up with by the end of the trilogy. Also implying that the original G-SOPHIA either finally meets its demise in this game, or gets a big upgrade at some point. I'm thinking the former, as this new Sophia looks to have entirely original parts and features. And man, this metal attacker looks like a freaking beast with its claws out front and that majestic new cannon. Could this be the ultimate form of Sophia and Garuda's combined might? Or does the design take after something else? For example, let's say Roddy's Sophia from Blaster Master Blasting Again? Check it out. The wheel guards on both the Sophia J7 and this new Sophia are very similar in shape. Here's another fun fact. Did you know that the acceleration blast, which is the most powerful weapon in the Zero games, was originally used by the Sophia J7 at the end of Blasting Again? Man, Inti's taken a lot from this game. Anyways, back on topic, it doesn't necessarily mean that Roddy is in BMZ3. It could just be a fun nod if it even means anything. On the other side of the spectrum, it could mean a taste of what's to come in future Blaster Master titles. Obviously nothing conclusive. There's also the possibility you get this new tank around the same time Jason gets that blue suit we also saw in the trailer. Which, speaking of that, since we are digging into the key art now, let's take a step back and examine it on the whole. I gotta say, of all the BMZ key arts up till now, this one really takes the cake as the most interesting one. I mean, there is a lot to take in here. I swear, I notice new details every single time I look at it. But I'll try my best not to add even more stuff even while I'm editing the video. Or I would be here all year. And I know good old Matt loves our key art analyses, so this one's for you. Let's go over my findings. The theming here is quite plain to see. Red versus blue. This ain't a Halo fan series though, so what's the meaning of the choice of colors here? We'll get into that in just a moment, but the same theme is even found on the Blaster Master 03 logo. Which, if I can take a detour for that one, the 3 on the logo has a claw-like design to it, kinda resembling the front of that alternate Sophia we were just talking about. But even more interesting is that stylized R behind the 3. Did you notice? You can barely see the R sliding into place during the trailer. What's the meaning of that one? Here's a little trivia. During the development of Blaster Master 02, the devs were told to refrain from calling it BMZ2 and use something else. What they decided upon was Blaster Master 0G. Now we know that they did eventually call it BMZ2 anyway, but the G is still alive and well if you inspect the game's logo closely. Furthermore, many key elements in the game start with the letter G on purpose. You know, like G-SOPHIA and the boss Planet G, for example. The list goes on. It appears Inti has done a similar thing for BMZ3 here, so it may be good to expect a lot of R this time around instead of G's. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if that new Sophia tank is dubbed R-Sophia. Okay, back to the key art. Let's examine this red versus blue theme a bit closer. We begin with Jason himself at the forefront. His left side looks normal aside from his suit being unbuttoned, but as we move over to the blue side of the force, Jason's coat begins to tear and looking pretty blue. He's clearly being corrupted by something. Reminds you a bit of Eve's condition in BMZ2, doesn't it? But a little different. Let's take a look at his left arm and compare it to none other than Leibniz. Jason's got the blue and gray color scheme going on, just like Leibniz. He has a yellow spike at the elbow joint, just like Leibniz. And he's holding a ring in his hand, kind of like how Leibniz wears a ring/collar thing as a necklace. Not an exact match of course, but it could be a reference nonetheless. It's almost like Jason is turning into Leibniz. Inti, are you trying to tell me right now that Leibniz is actually an alternate dimension version of Jason? Are we playing Zelda: A Link Between Worlds right now? After all, Jason does talk about in BMZ2 how he would have turned out just like Leibniz if he had lost Eve the same way that Leibniz lost his support droid. So even if we aren't talking about a alternate dimension Jason here, Inti is clearly playing up the similarities between the two and the polar opposite differences between them, especially going into BMZ3, just as if they were mirror opposites of each other. And as we will cover later, one of the key philosophies of the alternate dimension is that everything is reversed. For example, if Leibniz was alternate dimension Jason, it would make sense, as instead of being a hero and having a support droid, Leibniz would be the opposite, becoming a rogue anti-hero due to losing his support droid. It's all coming together now. But hey, that's just a theory. But I do see that juxtaposition throughout the entire key art hints at a clash. Perhaps being good being the red side and evil being the blue side. We could see Jason tapping into darker powers to traverse the alternate dimension, but he will have to struggle against that darkness, or the Leibniz part of him so to speak, to retain his humanity. That theme continues as we move on upward to his red and blue suits, the latter of which we see in action during the trailer. As we will see later with the gameplay demo, Jason does not start the game with this blue suit. The suit color does not change when he utilizes the VRV system to bring the Sophia through the dimensional portal, unless the blue suit is exclusive to the top-down dungeons, since we were only shown Sophia's sections. Regardless of when he gets it, Jason will be able to use the VRV system to transform into the blue suit form while traversing the alternate dimension on foot. In addition, we see a halo of sorts trailing behind blue Jason during the trailer, which almost looks like a callback to Albert's final form in Mega Man ZX Advent. Pretty sweet, huh? Above the suit stands the other lone character in the center of it all, not in red nor blue, Eve. We find her behind a ring of light that looks sort of like a portal. Could it be that Eve is trapped in the alternate dimension during the events of BMZ3? Lastly, it's time to address the characters on both sides of our heroes. Another thing we can find right away is war. On the red side are humanoid-shaped beings in armor. No idea who these dudes are. Maybe an army made up of the people of planet Sophia? Standing off in the background is what looks like their commander, but no details on who it could be. On the blue side are units of a more mechanical nature, though it's tough to say if they are truly robots or people in suits. It appears their commander is this new character with an antagonistic smile. Is it a girl or a very girly looking boy? I don't know. Either way, I would surmise this is the bad guy faction of the story. Moving on up in the world, we've already pointed out Leibniz on the blue side. It's hard to say if Leibniz is truly working with this antagonistic faction though, as he is deliberately pushed to the far background, perhaps indicating he's in more of a supportive role to Jason or otherwise. I believe the same is true of these new characters on the red side opposite of Leibniz. Now, those of you who tuned into my live reaction may remember that when I first laid my eyes on this key art, my first instinct told me that these were Elfie and Roddy. You know, Jason and Eve's children from Blaster Master Blasting Again. See? Told you we'd come back around to them again. As a recap, Eve and Leibniz met a spirit of Elfie during the true ending of BMZ2, who had apparently been killed in battle against the mutant cocoon. Elfie's words about support droids having a soul were what triggered the change of heart in Leibniz, making him agree to help Eve. More importantly, Elfie was the one that lended Eve the Andrea metal attacker to continue the search for Jason. Additionally, before this meeting, Eve picks up a broken blaster rifle that Elfie confirms to have belonged to her MA pilot partner, Roddy, whose face we never see. That's about all we got, so it's never confirmed if the Elfie and Roddy in the BMZ continuity has anything to do with Eve and Jason at all. That could have been just thrown in as a fun nod for all we know. Still, I wonder if there will be something more to it because, as I said, Inti has a method to their madness. They rarely start plot threads for no good reason. After all, Elfie wears a ribbon similar in design to the one that Eve wears. Indeed. Returning to the BMZ3 key art then, are these two seriously who I thought they were? Maybe? Maybe not? Okay, let's break this down. We do see a silhouette of a tank behind the girl that you could say belongs to the Andrea, but no way to confirm. These two are definitely a MA pilot and support droid duo though, no question about that. And that's about where the evidence supporting them being Elfie and Roddy end. If I had to say why these aren't the children you're looking for, quite simply, the girl's hair does not match up with Elfie's BMZ2 design. Most notably, she's missing that cowlick. You know what character Elfie's hair resembles more though? This person at the bottom right of the blue side. It's highly unlikely this is Elfie, but hey, this character's hair sways out similarly, and look, a cowlick. Is that a ribbon? Yeah, I'm stretching, but I can't help but point it out all the same. Let's head back to the MA pilot then. The only reference point we have for Roddy is his old artwork. Yeah, it's not really a match, is it? I can maybe see a minor resemblance, but far from anything conclusive. Of course, there's also the elephant in the room. These two are literally dead in the BMZ timeline. There's no way they can come back to life. That's never happened in Inti Creates games before. Oh, right, I forgot. Inti Creates is the king of never letting characters stay dead. Except for when it's done to spite Capcom when they asked them to make a 4th Mega Man Zero game. In conclusion, this is probably a new MA pilot duo joining the ranks of Jason's friends from BMZ2. Heck, we even find the new guy on the BMZ Trilogy key art amongst the other MA pilots, signifying he'll likely be an important ally for Jason in this adventure. Maybe this guy is the one that helps develop the VRV system? Speaking of the Trilogy key art, we also get a sneak peek at what Leibniz looks like without his helmet on. Guess we're finally gonna get a face reveal in this game after all. And again, Leibniz is paired with Jason's other friends here, even though he's been the sole rival out of the MA pilots up to this point. Perhaps meaning he will indeed help out this time, though the fact he is turned away from the camera puts a big question mark on that. Phew, we did it guys. That's the key art covered. As you can tell, that was a lot of stuff to digest, and we probably still will be digesting all that all the way up to launch, as Inti Creates does plan to release more information later on. I can tell already there's going to be a lot involved with the story this time around, and I can't wait to see the conclusion to Jason's saga. But wait, there's more! It's time to examine the trailer and gameplay demo in more detail. Starting simple with the trailers, of course. As we all know, first impressions are everything, and this trailer kicks off with an awesome pixel animation of the G-SOPHIA SV blasting off from the tunnel as Jason embarks on his 3rd fight against the mutant kind. You can tell right away the cutscene animations are going to be ramped up in this entry. I'm loving it. The following couple of scenes takes us on a tour through what I presume to be the interior of the city on planet Sophia. We got a purplish colored moon or planet in the background beyond the windows, some familiar enemies from previous entries, the Garuda's homing laser, and Sophia's missile sub-weapons in action, and lastly, confirmation that G-SOPHIA's Gaia system, which allows the tank to recover SP after landing from tall heights or taking damage, and the wall jumping ability carries over from BMZ2. Next up are the on foot sections, which are the only look at the dungeons we'll get to see this time. But this is where we find the most additions to Jason's gameplay. For the first time in the series, Jason can dash to dodge incoming enemy attacks, like these new sentry joys that lock on before raining missiles where Jason's standing. From what I can tell, the dash is performed with a button press in combination with the direction you press. This is a feature I have found myself wanting in BMZ for a while, so I am super happy dashing is finally here. And hey, now that we have dashing and wall jumping, this is starting to look a little bit more like Mega Man X, doesn't it? One other difference of Jason's suit is the floating shield-like device he carries with him, the same we can see with that new MA pilot on the key art. Unsure what this does exactly, could be related to the new VRV system or part of a sub-weapon, perhaps based on defense. But sadly we don't ever see what the purpose for this is, so we're gonna have to leave it for now. This is also the part of the trailer where we get the reveal for the blue suit, which Jason changes over to upon utilizing the VRV system to enter a dimensional portal. This golden halo ring thing appears to be the item responsible for the suit transformation. Maybe it's an upgrade you can obtain at some point in the game, as we see this same ring trailing behind Jason in the following scene, giving those good old Albert vibes. Like with a lot of things, we don't exactly know what sets the blue and red suits apart from each other in terms of gameplay, but we do have the return of two things. Zavira, whatever you want to call him from Blaster Master 02, now reduced to a regular enemy. And, more importantly, the blast counter mechanic from BMZ2, so that's confirmed to be back as well. You know something? Going back a bit, when we watch Jason fighting in the real world, we don't see the counter icons on the enemies that would indicate you could perform the blast counter on them, but we do find that icon on Zavira here in the alternate dimension. Could the blast counter ability be exclusive to the blue suit in BMZ3? It would be weird if it was, given it being such a crucial feature in BMZ2, but I cannot rule out the possibility either. That does it for the announcement trailer. Time to hop on over to the live BMZ gameplay at NGPX. That was hosted by Matt Papa and Blaster Master Zero series director Satoru Nishizawa, featuring a very familiar sounding Blaster Master Zero origin story.
My very first day of my very first E3, I completely destroyed my lower back. To the point where I literally could not move, and I was bedridden for the latter 3/4 of E3. And because of that, our other team members were now free to do whatever they wanted. And one event led to another, to the point where our team was able to somehow got in on the meeting with Sunsoft and Nintendo, and through a series of events, we became the would-be developers and publishers of Blaster Master Zero.
So basically, the moral of the story is, if I did not destroy my back, and I just not happen to bump into the guy from Sunsoft because he was free because I destroyed my back, Blaster Master Zero probably wouldn't exist.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for taking one for the team there.
Yeah, that's one way to birth a franchise, I guess, you know.
The demo takes us on a tour through the outside areas of the city, meeting both old and new foes along the way. New stage gimmicks too, like this red trampoline and the glass platforms that break as you run over them. You're gonna want to keep these in mind for later. Now, hold on to your seatbelts because we're about to learn a lot more about how the 2D side-scrolling sections aboard the G-SOPHIA SV works, such as that extra orange bar over the usual blue SP bar. To put things into context for you, in past BMZ games, when you used more powerful mods that changed Sophia's main shot, it would use up SP in addition to the sub-weapons. This time in BMZ 3, the devs have rightfully separated the two kinds of weapons. The orange energy bar is tied to the main shot mods, while blue remains exclusive for the sub-weapons. That is a very welcome quality of life change. I know I personally avoided changing my cannon shots in BMZ 2 because I wanted to save the energy for the sub-weapons. Now I can just use both with no sacrifices. Very nice. In the example given here, the Sophia can utilize the orange energy to fire similar shots to the standard one, but more powerful. Matt specifically calls this one the powered shot, but I don't know if that's the official name or not. Now here's a quality of life addition for Jason himself when he's out of the tank. When he hops out of G-SOPHIA, he can fire a homing barrage of shots from his blaster rifle. That is cool because in past games, Jason's combat options were extremely limited outside of the tank, in the side view sections. Now, if only he didn't die from falling 2 inches, eh? Though we haven't seen him falling in any BMZ 3 footage at this time to confirm one way or the other. But I'm guessing he still dies because you would think they make a big deal about it if he no longer did. Here's a demo of how the Garuda's homing laser sub-weapon works. G-SOPHIA sends out a radar ring, kind of like echolocation, that locks onto surrounding enemies. The lasers will then attack any targeted foes. Not too bad. The homing lasers can also be used to open doors such as this one with the targets around the frame. Metroid Prime too much? As we progress a bit, we soon come face to face with a distortion in the world. Seems when you approach a distortion, that will summon a portal to the alternate dimension, which, as we know by now, Jason can enter with the VRV system. I hope you like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, or A Link Between Worlds, because this is a lot like the light versus dark world mechanic in that game. We will need to traverse the other side in order to move forward in the real world. There is an important observation to make at this juncture. Jason does not wear the blue suit when using the VRV system inside the G-SOPHIA. No sign of that golden ring either. That would support my theory that you can get the blue suit later in the game, or the blue suit is only exclusive to the dungeons. That makes sense too. So, I've got a question for those of you that played BMZ 2. Did you like Planet Div Itto and those swirly insta-death bars? Hope you did anyway, because that one planet towards the end of BMZ 2 was apparently just a taste of what's to come in BMZ 3. Because those swirly insta-death bars are back in BMZ3's alternate dimension sections, and they're everywhere! Seriously! Oh, and hey, there's the Gathers of Fire boss from BMZ2 that's also been downgraded to a standard enemy. I'm seeing a pattern here. He even reverts to a mountain when defeated. That's a cute attention to detail there. Returning bosses aren't the only key difference in the alternate dimension either. The philosophy coming in here is everything you knew about the real world is quite literally turned on its head. What's up is down, what's left is right, you get the idea. More specifically, remember those red trampolines? They've been turned blue in this space, and instead of making you jump, it now makes everyone else jump. It can also break those glass platforms from earlier. Well, darn, I guess we can't use them now. Or can we? As the player approaches, the platforms come back to help you across. Once again, everything is reversed here. Concepts you were familiar with before will now be pretty much the opposite, which should make for some crazy interactions and ideas in the alternate dimension sections. But yeah, sheesh, there's a lot of instant death traps here. If there is an early concern of mine regarding this game, it would be frustrations dealing with those swirly bars again. Anyone who's watched my BMZ2 streams, or even the best of compilations, will know the pain. I'll have to find out how I feel about these when I play the game for myself though. At least lives aren't a thing, so making mistakes doesn't even matter at the end of the day. And unfortunately, that's the end of our gameplay demo, as they stop right before they enter a dungeon. Aw man, guess a live on foot gameplay segment will have to wait for another day. So before we truly end things off, here's another example of how the alternate dimension will flip everything around, quite literally. Courtesy of the BMZ Trilogy trailer. We got some Gravity Man stage vibes here as the G-SOPHIA enters this portal and suddenly, gravity itself has flipped, forcing the G-SOPHIA to travel in battle on the ceiling. Awesome. I like Gravity Man stage. At long last, that does wrap it up for my Blaster Master 03 analysis. Overall, I'm loving the quality of life improvements, the story hints are juicy, the animations are pure eye candy, and I like the ideas behind the alternate dimension, aside from the instant death traps which are the early concern of mine. But forget about little old me. What do you think about BMZ3 so far now that we've covered it all? Let us know in the comments. And for more on BMZ3 and other Inti Creates and Mega Man content, stay tuned to ShadowRockZX. Until next time, rock on and roll out!